Hey guys, it's YXBA here, and I thought I would do a video today on the 76th Annual General Investors Meeting, which was held in Japan yesterday. And I just wanted to take some time to go over all of the news that I thought was interesting. And I just wanted to give a shout out to somebody who was able to tweet out all the information that was coming from the event. And his name is Cheesemeister3K. And I will put a link in the description below if you do want to follow him. He has a lot of good information that he puts out there. So the first thing that I thought was interesting was that President Kimishima was not actually reading the presentation at the beginning of the investors meeting, because usually they do some sort of an update and a speech, and then they go into a Q&A after that. But instead of going that route, I guess Kimishima felt a little bit more comfortable doing a pre-recorded narration with slides being shown. He did mention as well that he is going through a little bit of a trial and error period as Nintendo's president. I think that's a little bit to be expected because this came up pretty suddenly, the passing of Iwata and Kimishima being made the new president. However, we'll get into some of the more interesting news and speculation based on some of the things that were said during the meeting. One thing they said is, we're also researching VR, so we have the core technology. Long play sessions are an issue. We want to release something that can be played for long periods of time and carries value and is affordable. We want parents to feel at ease. So basically what I'm reading into this is that Nintendo is definitely interested in virtual reality, and they have been developing their own virtual reality technology behind the scenes, and they do possess the core technology at Nintendo. I think they're just waiting for the right time to come out with it. The experience, I think, is really, really good, but within that context, it's still pretty primitive in that there are some issues with most people not being able to play it for more than about 10 minutes per session without starting to feel a little bit woozy, and it's also very expensive, right? So I think that you will see Nintendo definitely come out with VR, but they will probably do what they do. They'll come out with something when the technology is actually ready to meet the mainstream market, and I think we can all look forward to that in the coming years. Another interesting tidbit was when they said, by using resources made for Zelda on other software, we can make many compact titles. The last Brain Training sold a lot with small resources. We're doing lots of things to reduce development times, like reusing game engines. Now, he gave an example, I think, that people could understand, that these investors could understand, that Brain Training didn't cost very much to make, and it sold really, really well. Now, obviously, if the plan is to use an engine like the one being used in the Breath of the Wild, they're not going to be using that engine to make games like Brain Training. They're going to be reusing that engine to make wonderful games. Like, what's interesting is they've started up a new studio in Kyoto, which is where they make Zelda, but this is a new Monolith studio. And I wouldn't be surprised if what he's referring to here is that they're going to reuse the Zelda engine to make a Chic Zelda game, and possibly it's going to be developed by the new Monolith studio that they're starting up there in Kyoto, because they'll be in close contact there with the Zelda team. So Miyamoto was talking about the Breath of the Wild, and here's what he said. Breath of the Wild has over 100 staff and over 300 people in the credits, spending over 5 years. Our current efforts will be helpful in the next production. The costs will be recovered by selling in large volumes, passing 2 million in sales. So that's pretty interesting. They had a lot of people working on this game, and I think it was such a remarkably more ambitious project than they have done before that it was probably pretty inefficient. And after having gone through that experience, the next time I think they'll be able to cut down the costs considerably. But doing the rough numbers here, they're talking about needing to pass 2 million in sales of the game. That tells me that when you combine their marketing budget specifically for the game, which I don't know if they will have a marketing budget specifically for the game all that much, because I think it'll probably just be a part of the NX launch budget, and that'll be something that's featured in that. So the game itself may have cost over $100 million to make, which is pretty impressive to see Nintendo making games at that scale, but I'm sure they will make all that money back and more. I would expect on both platforms that this game have no trouble surpassing 6 million sold and may even go as high as 8 or 9 million sold, depending on how successful the NX ends up being in its first year. Nintendo also said that we believe smart device titles will be profitable. We're cautious about British EU exit effects, which may affect sales and profits if the yen continues to be strong. So what he's talking about here is how basically the people in the UK got a chance to vote in a referendum recently and decided that the UK should be leaving the European Union. And it's had a very adverse effect on the short-term economy in the UK. There's a lot of uncertainty now globally that this is going to be a trend, and markets are being hit. And when markets like the UK get hit, what ends up happening is people look to safe haven markets, right? Like the United States, like Japan. And so as the British pound goes down in value, the yen is going up in value, and that's having an adverse effect on Nintendo's business right now because they want to have a low yen. The lower the yen, the more money they make every time they sell something outside of Japan, which is where a majority of their sales come. So that's something they're a little bit concerned about right now. Miyamoto also said normally we would have shown the NX at E3, but we didn't. We were worried about imitators if we release info too early. I find this really, really interesting. Nintendo always talks about this every generation, but the fact is that this time around they're actually showing things off much more close to the launch of the system. I have a theory on that, and correct me if I end up being wrong, but I think that a large part of what is new about this system, what is fresh, has nothing to do with the core controller, right? So it's something that is maybe more optional, or a lot of it is like software-based stuff, because those are things that can be more easily copied than a core controller, because you can always just add an add-on. If it's software features, they can always do software updates to copy these features pretty quickly. It'll take time to develop these features, of course. Okay, so Kimishima was responding to a question about Iwata Asks and whether he will take the place of Iwata. So here's what he said. In regards to Iwata Asks, I don't come from a game dev background. So if I ask, it wouldn't be interesting, which is pretty much more of what I have talked about in the past, where I've said that Kimishima is actually quite different than Iwata because he's basically a straight up businessman, and I actually think that in some ways that's going to be a good thing for Nintendo, because the businessman, they don't have their own bias or agenda so much. They just want to, listen to consumers and listen to the people that they trust and come to sound decisions, and they're willing to maybe be more open to a variety of ideas when you don't have your own preconceived ideas yourself. Another interesting tidbit is when they said, up to now, the goal has been to expand the gaming population regardless of age, gender, or experience. Now, the focus is to increase the population exposed to Nintendo IP. To me, this was the highlight of the general meeting, because it really feeds into everything that I've been talking about on this channel. Basically, since I started the channel, Nintendo is going through a change. They're going through a shift. They are moving away from the Wii mindset. And Miyamoto made some comments, I think it was about a year or two ago, when he talked about how Nintendo was going to focus more on the dedicated gamer, and that the casual gamer had a very apathetic view towards games, and Nintendo's been frustrated by this. Okay? And so a lot of people have been like, yeah, but the Wii U didn't work out, so now they're going to be going back more towards the casual. And to me, this is perfect evidence that no, actually, that switch away from expanding the gaming population is fully continuing with Nintendo. Of course they're going to be focusing on kids a lot and so-called casual gamers, but it's not necessarily to drive those people into their console. They're going to have other businesses on top of a console business, okay? So they're going to make so much money in mobile that they may not care whether kids play games on their dedicated console. The kids can wait until they're older and have money of their own, and they're already big Nintendo fans because they've seen Nintendo animes their whole life. They've played the games on mobile, and when they're looking for something more serious and more of an upgrade in the Nintendo family, that's when they'll get on board with the dedicated hardware. Okay, so there was some more information as well about the 3DS. They said Pokemon Sun and Moon is due out worldwide in November. Many other Nintendo and strong third-party titles to be released. The aim is to make the platform active again. So it sounds to me like they have a big goal here of extending the life cycle of the 3DS. So they don't sound like a company that is about to come out with a console handheld hybrid. They sound like a company that's about to come out with a console and a company that is trying to extend the life of the 3DS maybe for another year or so until they come out with their next gen handheld. And they also said for the Wii U, The Legend of Zelda: The Breath of the Wild will be released next year. The NX is due out worldwide in March 2017. The dedicated game machine business will continue to be core. I'd love to read into that they're saying that the dedicated gaming business will continue to be core focused. But I think that in this context, they're saying that it's still going to be a core part of their business. They're not necessarily saying that the system is going to be focusing on core gamers, although that is what I believe the system will do. I also found it interesting that they're basically saying that The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild will be released next year. Wink, wink. The NX is due out in March. So, to me, I'm thinking they're not quite ready to say that this game is going to be a launch title, but when you say those two things so close together, I feel like they're really trying to drive home that this is likely going to be targeting the launch of the NX, and I think we all expect it to come out at that time. You know, the last thing they want is to announce that it's a launch title and have to delay the game by a month again. So they're playing it a bit safe here, in my opinion. So there you have it. That's everything that came out of the annual general meeting. If you like this video and would like to hear more from me, please subscribe, and also remember to click that like button. I look forward to hearing from you. Give me your thoughts on this video, and I will try to get back to as many of you as I can.